We are the Anti-Starving Artist by Launching Creative. Today we have with us Brandon Turner. He's the VP of Marketing at Bigger Pockets. It's an amazing, amazing source for real estate investing, which is just incredible. And it's a lot more creative than you might think on the surface. So Brandon, I have a question for you. If someone were to say to you, this idea of being creative for a living is not realistic, at best it could just be a hobby, but you need to go out and get a real job, quote unquote, what would you say to them?
I like that question because actually, that when I look back on my story of like how I got started, kind of with just entrepreneurship in general, I had called my dad and told him I wanted to be a real estate investor. So like I wanted to have my own business, do my own thing, and he told me I was crazy. Said I needed to, wise up, go get a real job, stop dreaming, and go be an engineer or a what was it? Yeah, engineer. I think is what mechanical engineer is what he wanted for me, or a lawyer. Either one, lawyer, mechanical engineer. Good, solid career jobs. And luckily I didn't listen to him. And to this day, it's been 8 years since that day. Every time I see him, he still asks me and why I didn't become a lawyer or a engineer or whatever. So. I mean, it's an interesting question that did happen to me, and my response back then was probably a lot worse than what it would be today. So today, my response to that would be, let me backtrack before I actually say exactly what it would be. But my favorite book at the time I got into entrepreneurship was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Nick, have you read that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah. So there's that line in that book which was just, it hit me so right, and it said, people who are rich teach their kids not to say, I can't afford it, but how can I afford it? Mm-hmm. And I can't do it, but how can I do it? So if somebody tells me that I need to give up my dream of trying to make money out of thin air and by creativity, which is what I love doing, and I need to get real, I would tell them that for them, I think that maybe works for them because they're the type of person that thinks, I can't do it, I can't afford it, they can't be. But for me, I want to use my brain. I want to expand my brain. And I want to always be thinking creatively on how do I do it? How do I make that magic happen? And I think that's the world's funnest game. I mean, what's the point of everything we're doing today if it's not to, enjoy ourselves along the way? And that's how I enjoy myself, is by trying to manifest whatever this is, life, out of creativity. So that I mean, again, it's maybe not for everyone, and I think people who would question that are the type that it's not for. And I would say, great, yes, like my dad would not be a good entrepreneur because he can't think outside that. He thinks you have to have a 4-year degree and get a good job at a good company and work there till you're 65. So. Yeah,
Sure.
So for those people, I don't know if you can convince them. I really don't. I think it has to come down to, I don't mind. I honestly wouldn't mind going broke 10 times in my life. I wouldn't mind losing everything 10 times because it's the game that's fun. I don't want to go broke, but that's part of the game. It's like a big game of poker, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and it's all part of playing it. So
sure, and just knowing that you could come back and be stronger for doing
Yes.
that, for having acquired so much and then losing it, kind of like the Dave Ramsey thing, from rags to riches, back to rags, back to riches.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, Dave Ramsey wouldn't be where he is today if he hadn't have lost everything back in the 80s or whenever he lost everything. And I think every entrepreneur is like that. If you look at all the big guys like Gary Vaynerchuk or Seth Godin, any of those guys that we look up to, that is, they went through a lot of struggles and they lost a lot of things in order to get to where they are. And I will never be as big as one of them, I'm sure, but it doesn't matter because I'm having the same level of fun that they had when trying to get to that level. So
sure. I mean, and that's one of the things that I've been learning the past few years is just how quickly time goes by, and it's going to be one of those things where I'll turn around before I know it and I'll be 50.
Yes.
And if I'm not doing something that I love, I mean, oh my gosh, that sounds awful.
Yeah,
And
doesn't it? I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people get up and work a 9-to-5 job they hate for 40 years straight. And it blows my mind that people can do that. I mean, So I guess to go back to your original question, if somebody asks me, how could you do that? How could you try to make a living out of creativity? I mean, my response is, how could you not? Like, how could you not do it that way?
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
I love that. I really do. And it's so funny you would use that line from Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that was really my first book I ever read as far as just anything within entrepreneurship, within finance. And I think that's kind of what most people say who have read
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. It just kind of laid the foundation. But yeah, that
Yeah.
line really stood out to me. Is just you're challenging your brain to you're challenging yourself to think in new ways and in creative
Yep.
ways, and saying, well, how can I do this? How can I create this, or how can I make this happen? And so, no matter what you're in, I think creativity is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%.
Well, cool. Well, Brandon, this really has been a blast and interesting story. Brandon was the first person I actually ever interviewed, and he's in episode 2, interestingly enough. So he was generous with his time. He came back here and did this video interview, and so we're definitely going to be posting this. And if you like what you've seen, be sure to check out the podcast interview. It's just this, but more in depth, and we're talking about all things creativity, entrepreneurial, and that's at launchingcreative.com/Brandon Turner. And Brandon, thank you so much for being here. This has been a blast.
Thank you, Nick. This has been great.
All right.